We take a closer look at the long-term impact of this horrific event. The loss of life and property is still impacting descendants of Greenwood. And last week, the oldest living survivors of the massacre testified before Congress.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot. I will not.
Let's bring in the rest of our panel. National Geographic History Resident Tucker C. Toole, entrepreneur Keewa Nurulluh, and Professor Dinah Ramey Berry. She's the first black woman to chair the history department at UT Austin. Thank you all so much for being here with us to discuss this today. Dr. Berry, I'll start with you and just ask you to sort of give us some context of what was destroyed, the lives that were lost, and the aftermath. What do we see now?
Well, first of all, you had a number of businesses, several blocks of businesses, law offices, health offices, theaters, clubs, funeral homes. These were businesses that were built up by African Americans from the ground up. They built these businesses and they thrived. People moved to Tulsa to be a part of this community, and they uplifted themselves and they took care of one another, and they did a wonderful job in staying as a part of this community because of segregation and because of Jim Crow. They were not allowed to live in other parts of the community, and so they thrived in this area in the Greenwood district.
Tucker, while you were conducting research for Nat Geo, you actually discovered that your own great-great-grandfather was one of the wealthiest men on what was known as Black Wall Street. Tell us more about what you learned and what that discovery has meant to you.
Well, that discovery means everything. And in my reporting with National Geographic through the History magazine, I learned that my great-great-grandfather was one of the wealthiest men on Black Wall Street, and if not the world at the time, and owned the Stratford Hotel. And just listening to what Ms. Crutcher said in that clip, that resonates so well with me. In that, you don't know if the Stratford Hotel would have been amongst the ranks of the Hiltons and the Marriotts and some of the premier hotels today. So, the Stratford Hotel was a premier hotel and the crown jewel of the Greenwood community at the time.
And Keewa, I know that you also have this personal connection here. Your great-grandfather's store was destroyed. How did your family discuss that part of your history? How did you guys talk about it?
Wow, not as much as I would have liked. The previous generation wasn't like us, going to therapy every week. Aside from trauma, and just recovering from that, really just trying to move on. Something so traumatic, and obviously people know that they have fled from a horrible incident, just not wanting to rehash the past, to just pretty much move on. So we don't have as many details as I would like in terms of what.
Yeah. Professor Berry, the destruction of Black Wall Street was devastating for thousands of families, and still 100 years later, we can feel the economic impact of that. Tell us more about the impact it continues to have on the community there.
Well, as you saw on the clip just a few minutes ago from Tiffany Cross, there are Black generational wealth that was lost, generational wealth that was built for generations before that. And now you have communities that are still trying to come back. We still have people that are there, which is wonderful, but the amount of economic loss that came as a result, and the number of families that had to flee, that had to leave the area, had a large impact on the thriving Black community that existed when Greenwood District was in its prime.
Now, Tiffany, your 2-hour special on Saturday is going to focus on America's racial reckoning with this event. This wasn't taught in history classes. I mean, we're hearing here even families who were affected weren't talking about it. What do you hope viewers take away from your conversations and learn about something that their eyes might not have been open to before?
Right. Thanks for that. That's a great question, Savannah, because I think what's unique about Tulsa is that it was not unique. It was not unique in its construction, nor was it unique in its destruction. There were black communities all across this country who were fleeing white violence, building their own communities. And unfortunately, those cities became rubble because of violent white attacks that happened during last century. And, you know, I think one thing that's important to note about Tulsa, we're using it as a microcosm to show that this is how institutional racism still to this day impacts families all across this country. What happened in 1921 was 2 years after the Red Summer of 1919, where these kind of attacks happened in Gary, Indiana, in Detroit, Michigan, in Omaha, Nebraska. Pick up a black massacre. And it's even important how we talk about it, right? Some people refer to this as a race riot. Call it what it was. It was a massacre of people trying to build their lives. So as this conversation happens, while there are a lot of people on the Republican side of the aisle attacking critical race theory, trying to rewrite history, similar as we see the same thing with the January 6th Commission, this is a conversation that it may be a little uncomfortable to have, but the more we talk about these things, the less uncomfortable they'll be, and hopefully create a future where there's more equal footing for everybody.
Tucker, in addition to the feature piece that you wrote, you're also telling your great-great-grandfather's story. How critical is storytelling to helping us understand this history?
It's critically important because before I even started writing the story on JB, I didn't really know much about it. I knew my grandfather had spoken to me about it when I was younger. He had let me know how important Black Wall Street is and about JB's hotel. And me learning this through my reporting, I sort of realized, you know, I didn't know nearly as much, and this is a very much important topic. And amongst, you know, other youth that I've spoken to, you know, they have no idea of Black Wall Street, and it sort of sparks an interest in their own Black history. So it's so important for not only the Black community, but the youth and people who haven't been educated about Black Wall Street and sort of some of these other historic tragedies, you know, to educate themselves and to learn about these things.
And Keewa, you're an entrepreneur and business owner now. What do you want people to know about the impact this had on you and your family?
Oh, I want people to know that we are survivors. You know, even those of us who might be impoverished now, whose families once had money. And for me, trying to continue the legacy of entrepreneurship, we're survivors. We're here to build again. And this history should not be forgotten. I'm here to be a pillar of the community in Chicago, just like my great-grandfather was a pillar of the community in Tulsa. And we do want reparations. And if we don't get it, we'll keep on building.
Dr. Barry, Keewa, Tucker, and Tiffany, thank you all so very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning. And you can catch more of NBC News' coverage from Tulsa, including the Blood on Black Wall Street special that is tonight on NBC News Now.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.